The increase in anxiety, depression, and mental health issues is very obvious. And Rob, that's for all ages, children as well as adults. So it has not been a very easy time, and it has not gotten any better from what occurred last year.
We all know how important resilience has been through the pandemic. It's more important than ever now. And yet, it's one thing to talk about it. It's another to really summon resilience when we're now starting in on almost year number 3 of the pandemic. What do you tell people?
Well, one of the things I say to them is resilience is even more important, and we really have to proceed, because what is the alternative? And one of the things I focus on, Rob, in all my writings is this notion of personal control. Resilient people focus on what they have control over and don't expend a lot of time and energy about things over which they have little control. Now, I'm not saying any of this is easy. So what makes what I call personal control so much more difficult now is the uncertainty. You feel much more a sense of personal control when you know what's going to happen. But now is a time when people really have to think about that things are unpredictable. And I always say, in terms of personal control, what we have control over is our attitude and response to things. And I know it's not easy, but then I start looking at how do you prepare for the uncertainty that takes place?
What have you been telling parents, Bob? Because this has all been so difficult for parents, in large part because they don't have control over schools. And as there parents who have kids in schools, and school's on, then school's off. School's remote, then it isn't. Kids have to wear the masks to school, and then maybe they don't. This makes it very, very difficult for parents as they try to juggle school, loving their children, doing their jobs, and so forth. So what do you tell parents?
There's a wonderful concept called self-compassion, and it's not necessarily easy to achieve, but give yourself a little slack. Realize that this is a very difficult time. I say to parents, there are things we could do. Be problem solvers. Things come up, sit down with kids. How are we going to solve problems? Validate your kids' anxiety, but always do it in a problem-solving way, because resilient people see problems as things to be solved rather than overwhelmed by.
Part of the reason why the pandemic has been so aggravating is because the rules just seem to keep changing. It's just so unpredictable, and we all kind of have a sense of whiplash. What's the best way to deal with this constant changing?
Always think about the obstacles that you're going to face, not as a self-fulfilling prophecy, but then think about, when these obstacles come up, how might I handle them? And they've actually found that if people could consider the obstacles like the uncertainty and think about how they could handle it, because we have control over our attitude and response to things, it helps them to be more resilient. And getting back to parents, if kids see us as parents handling it that way, they're going to be more resilient. And again, none of this is easy. I want all your listeners to practice self-compassion, that this is a very, very difficult time, but being resilient and focusing on personal control is more important than ever before.
Your final thoughts as we start off on this new year and try to keep navigating through this pandemic.
I want to underline this. It's very important that we also have a group of friends, whoever. Resilience is housed in positive relationships we have. So make sure we keep those relationships, make sure we have supports in mind, and just recognize that things are going to come up. I still am optimistic at some point. I don't know what it's going to look like. You know, there will be a subsiding of the coronavirus, and I hope that we will all be stronger. But I've told people all along, don't expect, because it's a new year, a month from now, or there are vaccines, that all of a sudden the issues we face are going to be gone in that regard. And I feel it's just being realistic. And the more realistic I could be, the more resilient I can be.